So here I am weighing the amounts of ice melter that are going to go in each of my 3 beakers for my 3 trials. I had to switch here a little bit because I actually accidentally had a spill. So this is the 3rd trial. In this lab, we're going to use a combination filter and funnel. It's called a filter crucible. We need the weights of these things when they're empty. So this is the first one. And then I'll weigh the others. So this works by vacuum filtration. And the glass has little pores in it, and that allows water through but stops the solid. Weighing the second one. And then the weight for the crucible that will be used for trial number 3. Next, I'm going to dissolve the ice melter in distilled water. It doesn't matter too much how much water I'm using. So I just kind of shot for around 40 milliliters. I thought that would be enough to dissolve it. And I'm not measuring it real precisely. I'm just using the markers on the side of the beaker. And that's kind of a slow process, so I'm going to speed it up for the second 2. And even though the ice melter contains substances that are all soluble in water, they don't instantly dissolve in water, so I have to help them along a little bit by stirring. So I got a glass stirring rod here, and I'm just kind of stirring these along. And that's a really slow process, so I'm speeding it up here for you. Between beakers, I'm making sure I rinse off the stirring rod so I don't transfer any of the solid from one to the other. Now I'm weighing out some of my sodium carbonate, and I'm using the less precise balance. I don't need a lot of precision here. I just want to make sure I have enough sodium carbonate. It's not really important exactly how much I have, So I'm just roughly weighing out. I figured if I put 5 grams in each beaker, that would be more than enough to precipitate out all the calcium. So I put 15 total, and then I'm going to dissolve it in 150 milliliters of water. And then I'll put 50 milliliters of the resulting solution in each of the beakers. And that way I make sure I have 5 grams of sodium carbonate that ends up in each beaker. So again, I have to stir this to get it to dissolve, and I'm speeding that process up. So now I'm going to take, like I said, 50 milliliters of this solution, which should contain 5 grams of sodium carbonate dissolved, and I'm going to add that to each one of my 3 beakers full of dissolved ice melt. And you can see as soon as I do that, that this white precipitate forms. And I'll repeat that process. Next thing I'm going to do is filter out the precipitate. So I'm using vacuum filtration here. So this is hooked up to the sink in this thing called an aspirator, and you can see that it puts a strong suction on the top of that flask. And then I'm going to put our little filtering crucibles in there. So this is a thing that has a glass filter built right into it. It's extremely precise, very small pores. So this is number 1. And I'm going to pour that sample in there. And this is a really slow process, so I'm speeding it up, but it slowly draws the solution through the glass filter. It doesn't hold the whole beaker full, so I have to refill it a couple of times. So you notice that there's a lot of precipitate that's stuck to the sides. I want to make sure that all gets in my filter, so I'm using a distilled water rinse to get the rest of it flushed down into the filter as I do my final segment of filtration. Now as we look closer, we can see that there's very little water there. In fact, it's starting to dry out as the vacuum pulls the remaining water through. Now it's obviously not going to be bone dry here. There's still going to be some moisture in there, so we'll have to dry it in the oven. But most of the large amount of water has now been pulled through and is sitting inside that plastic flask, which leaves the precipitate, as you can see, a little layer on top of that glass filter on inside of the filter crucible. So I shut off the water to remove the vacuum, and I pull off my little filter crucible. And then I take my second one for trial number 2. And then I start filtering that. So I'm going to do that for trial 2, and I'm going to do it for trial 3, but there's no need for you to watch all that happen. So we'll be skipping right through that as soon as I get this one started. Now I'm taking all of the filter crucibles and I'm putting them in an oven to dry the remaining water that didn't get pulled through by the filter system. I'm going to turn my oven on to 150 degrees. It's warm enough to dry it out. Now this is overnight. This is the next morning. I'm pulling my samples out, all 3 of them. And I'm just going to let them cool on this piece of paper before I take a final weight. And now I'm weighing the final dried filter crucibles with the precipitate inside them, and I'll do that for all 3.